Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, one indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Texas Pledge. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to Texas, one state under God, one indivisible. Order on. Detail assemble. Detail up, out, face. Detail, return to post. Detail up. Detail up, out, face. Detail at ease, audience at ease.
Good morning. On behalf of City Corpus Christi, I want to welcome everybody here. I saw Maglovio down over there, and when you see him, you need to thank him for ordering this perfect weather.
They said that we had the same fierce fighting ability with buffalo. You ever see somebody shoot at a deer and miss it? What that deer do? Run away. Shoot at a buffalo and miss it, he gonna charge. And he's not gonna run around nothing, he's not gonna jump over nothing, he gonna run through everything. They said that's how buffalo soldier folk.
And then the action brought up, and it would chop the end off like a cigar. Then it could be capped with a percussion cap and you're ready to fire. A soldier could get off about 6-7 shots in a minute with this, whereas 3 shots per minute was a standard for a muzzleloader. And I also brought a watch made by my countrymen at the turn of the century. It has several nice features to it. It's got the date and the day in the subdials, and
in 1915, I wrote a book, The Story of Corpus Christi, and I covered everything from the time period when Zachary Taylor's men camped on our shoreline in 1846 through today, 1915, where Corpus Christi is the second largest city in Texas with a population of 18,000. There are some people who say that I never conceded to the fact that the South lost the war. In the 50 years that have passed, I can tell you that my reflection is that there is a better feeling between North and South. Not due to the passage of time, because the Southerner has a very good memory, but because we have become acquainted with each other in a very intimate way. And through that intimacy is born respect. And in the end, we all went home, went back to work, and tried to make up for lost time.
Some guy named Samuel Houston. Now, there's a couple of people know the name. And he and I became very good friends. We drank together, we fought together, luckily not each other. Sam was 6'6", and I'm about 5'8". He has a little bit of a size advantage on me. And he's tough. but we became good friends. So the rest of the time, I'm also going to be telling part of his story too, because our lives became very intertwined in this. Now, good things must come to an end, right? Well, Sam left the Washington, D.C. to run for governor of Tennessee, which he succeeded at. So not long after, I get a letter. George, I need you. Come to Tennessee. Things are beautiful here. So I packed up my bags, headed to Nashville, and got a job in the mills as a, guess what? Clerk, keeping books. Well, Sam's tenure in the governorship was a little bit cut short because he had to resign to keep the, how should we say, the honor of the office together. And he went back to live with the Cherokee, with which he was a full-blooded member of the tribe. He was called Raven. But later on, after he was depressed, he began drinking. They started calling him Big Drunk.
But you know, I was telling you how the women in Mexico would follow their men into battle. This is a woman, and Louis was so cool. I don't know how he would do it on a motorcycle. He'd drag all his stuff out and photograph all this stuff. Here's a young soldier all decked out with all his guns and such. This might be my second, that woman following her husband into battle. You know, it even snowed one time on Abasolo Street, and I'll have to find that picture, but he took his camera out on the street and took a picture of Main Street looking across the river, Rio Grande, into Levee Street in Brownsville, and it's just dusted with snow. And so that was a pretty rare event for South Texas. That's still a rare event. And here's a young soldier. Actually, you know, we went through a lot, and Louis did save our lives in Indianola, and we kind of settled down here in Corpus. Yep. Down by the marina, we had a home. Well, we stayed in the Ziegler Hotel, actually, and then we built our own home and photography studio. And here's one of the pictures we took there at our Corpus Christi gallery.
Back over here is where y'all were located?
Yeah, it was kind of where those tall buildings are. It's kind of in that direction.
So I served on Mustang Island at BF Field Artillery as a first lieutenant and then a captain. I retired from the government. We were attacked though, and I became a prisoner of war in New Orleans for the Union. My brother Jasper though, he was a high-ranking officer in the Union. So whenever he found out that I was in New Orleans, he was able to arrange a prisoner exchange in Vicksburg. And I was able to return back to Corpus Christi, where we then had our second child, who we named Jasper after my brother. 1867, though, the yellow fever epidemic started in Corpus Christi, and my wife caught yellow fever and passed away. So our two kids went to live with her family, and I decided to focus in on my work. I started the Corpus Christi Advertiser. It was a great publication. It became so popular that I was actually able to sell it, and I was able to name it it became named the Corpus Christi Caller, now known as our very own Caller Times. In 1870, I remarried to Anne Marie Heaton. She was a local merchant's daughter, and we had 3 kids together over the next 10 years, until in 1880 I passed away of mental disorders.
They're not trying to sink that ship. You can't sell it off, and there goes all the money that you worked so hard for. So on vessels, they would have these lashed around the mainmast or the masts, and they're boarding pikes is what they're called. And you could use them to either get onto a ship or defend your ship. So when the ships would get close enough, they would throw grappling hooks trying to lash the ships together to pull them close. Well, as they're doing that, you've got guys lining the decks with these pikes, and anybody trying to get on the ship, they're trying to push them off, keep them off. Now, the guys trying to get people on the ship, they're doing the same thing. They're trying to push the enemy combatants back, and then the guys with the pistols and the swords are going to rush and jump on board the ship and do what they say, take the prize. So once you get on board the ship, you got a pistol, single shot pistol, sea service pistol is what they're called. They're 62 caliber, so about roughly about what we would call a 14 or a 16 gauge. You don't see a 14 gauge really, but that's in that general area. You got one shot though. Now if you look at this pistol, see that big bull brass end on the end of it? After you fired your shot, this became a club, yeah. Now, they're also jumping on board these ships with the cutlasses.
And a cutlass is just a very short sword. You don't want a long sword because it's going to get stuck in the rigging and everything else. When you think of these ships, you're going to have lines that are broken and stuff hanging down. So these swords are short so that you can maneuver in this kind of compacted area. So they'd have, you know, after they discharge your pistol, you'd have a pistol using it as a club or for defense, and then you'd have your cutlass. They got this little knuckle bow on there, one to protect your hand, but two so you can punch with it. Now,
the stampede is probably one of the worst fears of cavalry, obviously, because the Longhorns had long horns. They had very hard hooves. They were very aggressive, very wild. So, and they were very easily spooked as well. If one of them stepped on like a lizard or something and it squeaked, the whole thing would go running, and we'd all have to flank around the side and stuff like that, try to rein them back in and calm them down and stuff. Another thing about the cattle is that they carry ticks. From down here, they'd carry ticks that were very detrimental to the cattle up north. And that's why we only took them on 2 trails. So they didn't pick anything else up, like a disease or another type of bug or something like that.
So I think it's not discriminatory when the county pays for it and we go forward with this. We do not write the inscription. It's written by THC, and sometimes it comes to us not exactly the way we would like it written, so it's not unbelievable that Dr. Delaney sometimes changes some of those words to where they're more appropriate and where the grammar is correct as well. So then it's sent to the foundry in San Antonio, and they proceed with the casting of it. And finally we get it back here, and we look forward to having one of these occasions here at Old Bayview Cemetery. And so, Dr. Delaney, will you step forward, please, and share with the group your research?
Thank you all for being here at the Nueces of South Texas. And when it comes to this presentation, I think I have one problem. It's too short. Because in the course of this research, I learned so very, very much about this outstanding individual, Matthew Nolan, and yes, about his brother Tom as well. So,
thank you.
As short as it is, I will now read what I have written for this occasion. Among the many fascinating individuals buried here at Old Bayview Cemetery is Matthew Nolan, a man of extraordinary courage who left his mark on South Texas history. Matthew was only 30 years of age when he died, and for 18 of those 30 years, he was virtually under the gun as a soldier in the United States Army, the Confederate States Army, as a Texas Ranger, and as a sheriff. He survived bullets and arrows, only to be assassinated while serving as a sheriff. His brother Tom Nolan was killed while one of his brother's deputies making an arrest. Both Matthew and Tom Nolan are included on the Officers Down Memorial listing and Fallen Heroes listing of the Nueces County Sheriff Officers Association, both of which can be found online.
We're going to jump ahead to 1862. It's August of 1862. The Civil War is in motion, and the North is trying to blockade all the waterways so the South can't get supplies out to the troops. So an officer by the name of Kitteridge comes in with his flotilla, and he blocks the bay, and he comes ashore, and he says, hey, you need to evacuate the city. Well, being Texans, without hesitation, we looked him in the eye and said, we don't think so. But in the same, the women and children
did leave. Now, we went up to Nueces Town. Are y'all familiar where Nueces Town is? I know that this lady is. She lives in Nueces Town pretty much, doesn't she? Nueces Town is where Cal Allen is, along the river. Yes. And so my children and I went and waded out to the Battle of Corpus Christi there. Had a grand time. So with some friends, had some nice food, great food. I better grab Julie over there.
Well, anyway, So I myself am now a major in the Confederate Army. I'm standing before you today as a major of artillery and engineering. And I get this brilliant idea that I am going to launch a cannonball across the bow of the ship, and that starts the 3-day battle of Corpus Christi. And so for 3 days, the battle goes on. Cannons are being fired. They try to come ashore. We repel them. We push them back. And after 3 days, Kitteridge gets in his boats and they leave. Well, all these unexploded cannonballs are laying out on the shore. So we decide, listen, let's take them apart and take the powder out and use it in our own munitions. Well, we discover an amazing thing, that some of these cannonballs had whiskey in them.
Now, you know, I never saw this whiskey myself.
You know, some people used to think that Felix had a drinking problem, but we'll talk about that later.
Captain Robert Neighbors saw that and said, "What the hell is that?" So he went up to the Indian camp and said, "Who's this?" He says, "It's my son. It's my son. Well, he doesn't look like you." "No, he's my son." And Captain Neighbors said, "Well, how much would you like for your son?" "How about $100? "Oh, yes, okay." And he sold his son. So Tito, right here, came to live in San Antonio with Captain Neighbors, who was adopted by the family. Stayed there, went to school with the Army. Then the Army of that era ended, and Captain Neighbors died. He lived with a widow for a couple of years, but now he's 18, 20 years old. And he says, "I'm going to go off to do my own fortune." And he wound up in, come on in, wait. Come on, do this the right way.
Yeah, right.
There you go. All right, thank you. So he decides to go to Port Lavaca because there's this new business. It's called shipping. They're bringing in boats, they're offloading, and they're putting merchandise in and out and all that. And he figured that'd be a good place to work. Well, he did good. Started managing, started doing more work, and he was making a good little business. All of a sudden, his business skills were really doing well. And then the hurricane comes and wipes out Port Lavaca. Just leveled it. He managed to get away on horseback and buggy, and they came to Corpus Christi. So when he got here, I mean, he didn't know anybody, but he had a letter of recommendation, which they were very back in the days they did that. Says, "I so-and-so vouch for this man, Tito Rivera, good in accounting and business. I endorse him, letter of recommendation." So he went to a gentleman named Perry Doddridge, showed him the letter. Perry Doddridge at the time was opening the first bank in Corpus Christi, the Corpus Christi Bank and Trust. So when he saw him and he saw the letter of recommendation, saw what he could do, he made him the bank manager. And he says, "You do this, I'm going to go build a railroad." He was trying to get money to build the Tex-Mex rail line. Okay? So that went on for a few years. But Mr. Doddridge, about 8 years later, went bust, and the banks went bust because there was a run on the banks. So Tito opened up his own little store. He had the Tito Rivera books, periodicals, and stationaries. This is in 1888. And he sold supplies to office businesses. And here is his signature, T.P. Rivera. And he had a very nice home. This was his home on Chaparral Street. I think it's where the Burger King is now. That was downtown. So he had a beautiful Victorian home. And so, you know, as I was telling the young man, the Victorian era, if you were lucky enough to have a little money, you dressed up like this. And here's the funny part. Who you are is how you dress. I'm a banker. I'm not going to be wearing shorts and flip-flops. I'm going to be wearing a hat.
Now, did you know when canned goods were made? They were made in 1805. the British made it, and we traded whatever we had for that for canned goods because we needed food on the road.
This is the Sharps carbine. Not the same exact one, but it does break open. So the trigger guard is a break, stuff like that. So you put your paper lady, which is the patch right here. That's the patch. And your 50 caliber, not a 50 caliber bullet, but a 50 caliber lead ball. Put that in, and then what this will do is cut the paper lady so that you want excess. Single side, and you're ready to shoot.
Isaac. February 11th of 1843, we escaped. They rounded up 176 of us. A few of us had escaped, and they decided, okay, we're going to execute you, one of them were 10 men. So what we're going to do is we're going to take 159 white beans and 17 black beans and place in the bean pot. We were blindfolded, and we had to draw beans. If you got a white bean, you were allowed to live. If you got a black bean, you were executed at dusk. I got a white bean, so I was allowed to live. Well, they marched us from Mears, Mexico, down to Salado, Mexico, where we were in prison until Santa Ana ordered our release on July 16th, 1844.
The water.
Yep. And you might hit one of them because they're all lined up just like you are. But that's it takes so long to go. They had the same advantage or disadvantage because they were doing the same thing, you know.
So my father was a physician, and he started the first drugstore here in Corpus Christi, and joined it to our house, and we lived right down there, kind of where Concrete Street is, not too far away, right down the hill. And my mother was of gentle birth, so she was kind of a high social lady, social life, and she made sure that I was very well educated. And as I grew, I was able to kind of follow my father in his footsteps. Everyone said I had his personality, just very happy, cheerful, jovial, just a very compassionate heart for his patients. And when the Civil War broke out in 1863, when the Battle of Corpus Christi occurred, we were forced out by the naval attack and forced out of town. And when we came back into town, back to the home, things had kind of changed in Corpus. There were a lot of Union spies, a lot of Confederate spies as well. And one of my jobs when I was younger, probably about his age, maybe 10, I would start over there, kind of up the hill with my little pails with my friend, and we would kind of pretend that we were going to get milk, and we would be looking for my father and Captain Levinskold so that we could intercept him with any messages that we had of possible Union soldiers wanting to come and capture them. So that was a big part of my life. It's a lot to ask for a little girl, but it was just the way it was back then. And we also had a brush with death. I did. One evening we were at my parents' residence, and there was a big rapping at the door. My mother calmly went to answer it, and it was a Union officer. His name was Mayor Doolittle. He was a very cruel man, very insolent, and he had been looking for my father and for Captain Levinskold for a long time. So they burst into the house with his soldiers. They started to tear things apart, searching for my father. Well, I got extremely frightened, so I went over to the sofa, buried underneath a blanket, and I was just laying there. Well, Major Doolittle did not realize that was me. He thought it was my father. So he grabbed his bayonet and extended it and went to go thrust it into the blanket, and my brother came out of nowhere, put himself in between me and the bayonet, and screamed and said, "No, that's my sister, don't kill her." So my brother saved my life that evening. It was still very scary. And he was satisfied that my father was not in there. However, in the next room over, Colonel Levinskold's wife was in there trying to distract the soldiers that were there because her husband was underneath that sofa. He was hidden at the time. So she used her genteel society ways, her feminine wiles, served them some cake, some wine, kind of had a good conversation, was chatting them up, and was able to distract them enough to where they were satisfied the men were not in the house. So they exited the house, and my father the entire time was outside up in an oak tree hiding for his life. And so that was very scary.
We had several engagements with Comanches. Shooting at you again, you better do it. So anyway, he got killed in 1860. A year later, the Civil War broke out, and then Colonel Ford came to me and asked me to serve with him in the 2nd Texas Cavalry, and he made me a captain. And I fought in several engagements, rose to the rank of major, was re-elected to sheriff, got married in 1862, and in December of 1864, I was walking down the street in Corpus with an individual who is identified as a horse trader, which means he was probably a horse thief, and 2 young men who had deserted from the Confederacy stepped out and fired a shotgun at us, and of course Mr. McDonald was killed outright, and I hung on for a few hours and died that night. I expect to be the first sheriff and the first deputy killed in the line of duty. The significance of this occasion is honor the cemetery. It was founded as General Taylor was bringing troops here. There was no bridges, so they had to ferry troops across Corpus Bay, and they were using a steamboat, and at that time technology was not real good, and the boiler exploded and killed 7 officers and soldiers that were on the ship, and so they needed a place to bury them, so this spot was picked. It's called Bayview because at that time there's no buildings, you can see completely off. It's a great view back there. There are individuals here there are people that are buried in the cemetery that fought in the American Revolution all the way up to the First World War. This is one of the first integrated cemeteries in the country. There are some Buffalo soldiers buried right over there. One of them actually fought for the Union during the Civil War. Some of the others were Indian fighters and what have you. So this was one of the oldest military cemetery in Texas, one of the oldest in the nation. All kinds of interesting people buried here.
There's about 600. They've done about. They did a survey of the buried souls at this cemetery, and they said that there's over 600 people buried here, and they have not got. They don't have headstones for every one of them, but you'll see little silver markers in the ground where they've identified someone else that's buried here that's not by a marker. But Matt and I have been living here. I turned 160 just last year, and so anyway. Thank you. But my big brother just got a dedication, and he thinks he's hot stuff now. So
let me read this to you.
No, I don't want to read it. Anyway,
let me whip this out.
We're here 365 days out of the year. Just step over there, just back up. And
hey, I'm the sheriff.
I know you are, but
it's fortunate for you that there were not nepotism laws in there. It says I'm a conspicuous role.
You are conspicuous.
Right.
What does that mean?
Means I stand out like a shiny star.
You do. You're taller than I am. You do stand out. You're a lot bigger than I am. Thank God I'm this small. Because you have to duck.
That's why you're the deputy.
That's right. So we're here 365 days out of the year. Y'all come see us, talk to us. We might talk right back at you.
He will.
By golly, and if y'all don't see the coffee made in the morning, stamp on his grave and tell him get the coffee out. All right?
I could just go by that place they call Starbucks and pour some down there.
Well, thank y'all for coming. We appreciate it. Hope y'all get to see everybody else. If you have any questions, you want to take pictures. If you'd like to read the newspaper, I've got the newspaper right here.
Probably would find that plaque a whole lot more informative.
I've got a great article of me. I take up almost one whole line. I don't know what's the newspaper terminology. If you get a column, thank you. Who said that? Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. You're the educated one here. So anyway, but this is a real McCoy back in the day. If you want to learn about something that happened on August 18th, here it is right here if you'd like to look at it. And if you have any,
the prices at the grocery store. They've gone up a little bit.
I would say that things have gone up. It's too damn expensive to live these days. You would love to see my newspaper? There you are. Go right ahead. Help yourself. Open it up.
Be the gunner, and I'm going to give them commands, and we're going to go through a dry run, and then we're going to fire. Okay. So the first command, normally we come off the limber with a command that said, detachment, attention, post on peace, march. In the armed services, you always got what you were going to do first with a slight pause, and then you would hear the command. So again, it would be detachment, attention, post on peace, march. And they would march, and they would end up in this position. At attention, facing forward. At that point, they would get a command where they would take implements. So they now take implements. And they go back to attention. The next command is tend the vent. Number 3 is now going to tend the vent. He's first going to clean it with a brush, and then he's going to seal it with a thumb stall. Very important that oxygen does not get into that tube, because if there's burning embers in there, it will explode. The gunner then hears that command response, then tend it, so he can now go to the second, and that is worm. And number 2 steps in, and he worms for any debris that's left in the tube. Now, something about these number 1 and number 2, they're probably in the most dangerous position on a cannon. One of the things that they have to do is they never can wrap their thumbs around the sponge, because if that sponge gets launched out of there, it'll rip their thumbs off. So they've got to learn how to turn that worm or turn the sponge with their thumbs out and only using these fingers to do it. So I'm waiting to hear something. Wormed. Okay, so I got confirmation that it's wormed. I'm now going to go to the next one, and that is wet sponge. Number 1 is now dipping his sponge into water. He's going to spin it out. Well, he's going to shake it out. It's going to be tight, Gary. With this stuff. And his routine is he rotates in one direction 3 times, pulls it out a foot, rotates in the opposite direction to set the nap, goes back in and rotates 3 more. And now I just heard the command sponge. So the next command is dry sponge. It'll loosen up. Sponge. Okay, I've now heard the response, sponge. So now, that's very good, Gary. I forgot that. Now, I do want to mention something. Think about this. In the federal battery of 6 cannons, how would the gunner or how would the battery commander know what the status of his cannons are? They didn't have walkie-talkies. So the only way that he knows what the status of this cannon is by where the cannoneers are standing and what they're holding. So right now, I know that I'm at the point where I can load the cannon. Number 1 is on the breech with his staff. Number 2 is in between the wheel, ready to receive the round. Advance the round. The powder monkey comes to the gunner inspects the round, he looks what he sees, taps him on the shoulder, he now goes to number 2. Not a real round, not a real round. Right. Load that fake round in there, Pat. Under the barrel. And then he says, round load. Okay, now I know the round's in. I'm ready for the next command, and that is ram. This is the most dangerous part. Number 1 pushes it in. He then brings it out about a foot, and slams it. And while he slams it, he gets out of the way and he tries to go to the hub as fast as he can. Because if that thing's going to explode, he doesn't want to be in front of it. Okay, so at this point, the gunner may want to adjust his elevation. He may want to use the trail spike to position the cannon. We're going to say that that was done, and now we are ready to piece. This is where number 3 pierces the vent with a vent pick, and number 4 puts the primer in the vent. Number 4 will, once he's got the tension right on the lanyard, he nods off number 3. He holds his hand out to me, his left hand out to me, and he says the piece is ready.
Piece is ready.
I have the piece. The next command is prepare, fire. Okay. Any questions so far? Because we're now going to load it. Okay, everybody at attention.